I thought if I changed my name, my city, and my life, the blood would finally stop following me. This is the story of how a lethal mafia kingpin broke his vow of peace to save the woman he loved. Welcome to the channel. If you love intense, slow-burn Afro-Korean romance thrillers, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. Press your body against mine and don't breathe, Hana. If they hear your heart racing, they'll take you back to Seoul in a box. J-Hoon's whisper was a cold, scraping rasp, entirely stripped of the gentle warmth he had used to speak to her for the last 4 years. He pinned her against the rough cedar wall of the greenhouse supply closet, his massive frame acting as a shield between her and the frosted glass panes. Hana could feel the heat radiating through his flannel shirt, a suffocating contrast to the freezing Montana wind howling outside. Her fingers knotted into the thick fabric of her traditional Ghanaian Kent scarf, her breathing coming in terrified gasps. For as long as Hana could remember, J-Hoon was simply the quiet guy who ran the local nursery. He was the man her father, the town's first African-American police detective, had brought home for Thanksgiving years ago. J-Hoon had arrived with nothing but silver scars across his back and a broken spirit that only quieted when he buried his hands in damp soil. Hana had grown up watching him tend to delicate winter orchids with absolute patience. They had shared years of quiet glances, long conversations, and a deep, unspoken attraction. To her, J-Hoon was safety, but the man holding her in the dark, right now, felt like an executioner. J-Hoon, she breathed, her voice trembling. Who are those men? They're not from here, J-Hoon murmured, his thumb pressing firmly against her lower lip to seal her silence. His eyes, usually soft, were wide and completely empty of light. Through the slatted wood of the door, blue-white beams of tactical flashlights cut through the hanging ferns. The voices shouting outside weren't speaking English. They were speaking rapid, harsh Korean. He is here. A voice boomed from the center of the nursery, followed by the shattering crash of a heavy clay pot. The cleaner's scent is all over this place. Find his daughter. If we find her, the rabbit will crawl out of his hole. J-Hoon's fingers tightened against the wall, the wood groaning under his grip. The absolute mask of pacifism he had worn for 5 years peeled away. Your father didn't just find me on the docks 5 years ago, Hana, J-Hoon whispered, his forehead dropping to rest against hers for a single, desperate second. He saved me from a consolidation job that went wrong in Seoul. I was the family's cleaner, the air sent to make people disappear. I left a trail of bodies, so deep it choked the northern district. I fled here to wash the blood off my hands. But the new syndicate came from Korea to take me out so they can finally control the entire Seoul underground. And they just used you as bait to drag me out. Before the first drop of blood hits the floor of this quiet valley, I want to take a moment to welcome everyone watching today. Whether you're joining our community from Accra, London, Seoul, or right here in the States, your presence here means everything. Drop a comment below letting us know exactly where you're watching from. I read and value every single one. Now, let's return to the night where a peaceful life is ripped away. The closet door was torn open with a violent screech. The bright glare of a flashlight blinded Hana, but before she could even cover her eyes, J-Hoon moved. It was a terrifyingly efficient, mechanical slaughter. He did not reach for a gun. He caught the first enforcer by the throat, his fingers crushing the man's windpipe with a sickening, wet pop. J-Hoon's face didn't register a single flicker of emotion. He grabbed the dying man's tactical knife midair, spun into the second attacker, and drove the blade upward through the bottom of the man's jaw. Hana stumbled out of the closet, choking back a sob. The blood sprayed across the white winter lilies J-Hoon had spent the morning trimming. He moved through the remaining men like a machine programmed for maximum destruction, breaking limbs and collapsing joints with a cold, rhythmic precision. Min-soo, the leader of the enforcers, stepped back toward the exit, his hands shaking violently as he tried to clear a jammed pistol. J-Hoon didn't chase him. He picked up a sharp iron spade from the potting bench and hurled it across the room. The heavy metal blade tore through Min-Soo's collarbone, pinning his body directly into the wooden frame of the main entrance. Min-Soo screamed, blood erupting from his lips as he hung there, his legs twitching uselessly against the snow. J-Hoon stood in the center of the devastation, his white linen apron completely soaked in dark crimson. He turned slowly to look at Hana, his breathing perfectly steady, his pulse barely elevated. He held his hand out to her, his voice flat and calm. "Come, Hana. We have to leave." Hana backed away, her heels catching on broken ceramic. She looked at his outstretched hand, then up at his dead, unblinking eyes. The man she had shared coffee with, the man she thought couldn't hurt a fly, was a monster. Pure, unadulterated terror made her entire body shake. "Get away from me," she whispered, pulling her Kent scarf tighter around her neck to wipe a speck of blood from her cheek. "Don't touch me. You're not J-Hoon. Who are you?" J-Hoon's hand remained frozen in the air, her words carving an unearned wound into his chest. He looked at his blood-stained fingers, realizing that by saving her life, he had permanently destroyed the only piece of humanity he had left. The drive through the dark Montana mountains inside J-Hoon's old pickup truck was an absolute nightmare of silence. Hana sat pressed against the passenger door, staring blankly at the snow hitting the windshield. The slow-burn attraction that had built between them over 4 years of quiet glances had curdled into volatile fear. Every time J-Hoon shifted gears, his arm came close to her knee, and she instinctively flinched. "My father knew," she said finally, her voice hollow. "He knew what you were. That's why he kept you close. He was keeping tabs on a killer." J-Hoon didn't look at her. "Your father kept me close because he knew that if I ever left his sight, the family in Seoul would think I was building my own crew. He was protecting you from the shadow I carry. You lied to me every single day," she hissed, her grief mixing with raw horror. "You sat at our table. You let me tell you about my dreams. And the whole time, you were just waiting for your old life to catch up to you." J-Hoon pulled the truck into a hidden logging trail and killed the headlights. The darkness swallowed them. He turned his body toward her, his face inches from hers in the dim cabin. "I was not waiting, Hana," he said, his voice dropping into a rough, desperate register that carried the full weight of his repressed desire. "I hated my past. The only time I felt like a man instead of a weapon was when you were sitting on my counter. But the syndicate won't stop. If I don't go back, they will burn this entire state until they find you. Then we go to the federal marshals," she countered, her dark eyes locking onto his with fierce strength. "There is no marshal who can stop them," J-Hoon said, his hand lifting slowly toward her face before he forced it back into a fist. "To keep you safe, to make sure no one ever uses you as bait again, I have to go back to Korea. I have to reclaim my position as the head of the table. I have to become the master of the underworld so I can command your protection from the highest seat." "No," she whispered, her heart hammering as the true tragedy of his choice hit her. "If you take that seat, you become the monster permanently." "The monster is the only thing that can keep you alive," he murmured, stepping out into the freezing snow, leaving her alone with the cold weight of his choice. Sometimes, the hardest thing to accept is that love can force someone to destroy their own soul. If you're feeling the weight of J-Hoon's choice and Hana's heartbreak, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and share this story. Your support keeps this community alive, and we are so grateful to have you here with us in the dark. Let's see the final cost of survival. The rain in Seoul was thick, dirty, and smelled of fuel. 3 months had passed. The transition had been a silent, terrifying bloodbath. The Northern District had been systematically hollowed out, the old executives purged in a series of calculated, robotic executions. J-Hoon had done exactly what he said he would do. He had reclaimed his throne. Inside the sprawling penthouse boardroom, J-Hoon sat at the head of a massive mahogany table. Dressed in a pristine black three-piece suit, his hands crossed neatly, he looked like an emperor of shadows. He was completely untouchable, surrounded by armed guards. He had won the war. He had secured his empire. But his soul was gone. The heavy double doors slid open, and two enforcers led Hana into the room. She had been brought to Seoul under his personal protection detail, not as a prisoner, but as a queen who refused her crown. She stood 10 feet away from his throne, her traditional Kent scarf still wrapped firmly around her neck, a vibrant gold and red contrast to his monochrome world. "The covenant is finalized, Hana," J-Hoon said, his voice flat, mechanical, and empty. "Your family in America and Ghana have been placed under a permanent immunity decree. The table recognizes your name as holy territory. No one will ever hunt you again. You are entirely safe." Hana looked down the long table at him. The vulnerability from the pickup truck was gone, replaced by a cold, boundaried strength. The power shift was total. He had all the guns, but she held the moral ledger of his life. "Safe," she repeated with bitter, unforgiving disdain. "Look at this room, J-Hoon. Look at the bloodstains you didn't quite manage to clean off the marble. You didn't do this to protect me. You did this because the pacifism was too hard, and you wanted an excuse to come back to your throne." J-Hoon flinched, a tiny crack appearing in his stoic expression before his mask hardened completely. He leaned back into the leather chair, the shadows swallowing his features. "Go back to your drums, Hana," he said softly, his voice a whisper that carried the finality of a grave. "Live the life my soul bought for you." "I will live my life," she said, turning her back on him without a single glance. "But every time I look at my hands, I will remember that they are clean only because yours are dripping in filth. I hope the throne is comfortable, Chairman, because you are going to die entirely alone in it." She walked out of the room, the heavy doors clicking shut behind her, leaving J-Hoon sitting at the head of the table, a powerful, untouchable monster who had saved the woman he loved, only to ensure she could never look at him again without seeing the blood on his hands. Thank you so much for walking through the dark with us today. This community means the absolute world to me, and having you here to experience these heavy, emotional journeys is a true gift. If Hana and J-Hoon's tragic path touch your soul today, please share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of the true cost of protection. Stay safe out there, take care of your heart, and I will see you in the next story.